You absolutely should be giving me a hard time, Brandon. Yes, sorry everybody. Almost 7:13, Brandon, but not tonight. 7:12 is my official time I've got here. So we beat the deadline. Yes, sorry, I was wrapping up a little bit, talking with Ryan Tracy over at Locked On Chiefs for the Wednesday podcast. So sorry for the delay. Got a lot of going on tonight. Going a lot of going on this week. We will have Nick Jacobs coming in here in a little bit to answer your questions as well and talk about everything that's going on with free agency this week. A lot of topics to touch about. I'm sure that everything will get asked, so I probably won't even go on with my usual monologue, even though we've got breaking news as of in the during this hour with the Mahomes restructure information coming out and what he's done there. So I'm sure it'll all come up. So let's just get going. And Brandon was in first, not only with the jokes about me showing up late and 7:13 and all, but the first question, thoughts on the Chiefs and who they'll pursue in free agent wide receivers with Mooney out. Samuel could be a target. Yeah, I mean, that's where the focus right now is circling. I mean, and looking at Curtis Samuel is generally considered the best fit that's out there. It's going to come down to price and what the Chiefs can afford. And yes, creating the cap space with the Mahomes restructure will go a little bit towards that, but they were pretty close as is after the Jones deal got done. And depending on which one you look at, Spotrac and over the cap right now are this is their toughest time as far as kind of trying to figure out and keep track of all the wheelings and dealings, because they they haven't had a chance to calibrate with the NFLPA database because that hasn't been updated yet. So there's a lot of confusion about where the teams are in cap space. I think those two trackers have been about $5 million apart on how much room the Chiefs have. You go on the best, most aggressive consideration calculation. The Chiefs have maybe $7.5 million in space before the Jones deal got done. So that would put them right at right at the salary cap limit. And then, you add in a couple of new contracts. Now, it's only going to be top 51 during the off season. So that changes the calculations a little bit. Sometimes you can add players onto your 90-man roster and it doesn't make a difference because they're below that top 51 contract level. And so they don't add to the cap during the off season. But bottom line, I mean, the roundabout way to talk about this is that, yes, the Chiefs do have a little bit of cap space, but it doesn't mean that they're interested in going out and getting a $19 million receiver. And I don't know there's any out there right now. I mean, I know, word is, Calvin Ridley might be approaching that. More and more it's looking like he's going to stay in Jacksonville, though. But then the question becomes, who is out there? What's available that would be a good fit for the Chiefs? And the receiver market has been really strange. Mooney and Davis got virtually identical deals, $39 million, 3 years. That was a little bit more than I thought both of them were going to get. The Davis deal kind of surprised a lot of people. Mooney, I was hearing maybe might get to 10 million, but 13 million a year was definitely a little bit more. But after that, no one's really signed any big, deals yet. And, you've got some names. Now, a lot of them are older names. So are the Chiefs going to be interested in anyone over 30, let's say? So your Allen Robinsons, your Odell Beckham Juniors, are the Chiefs interested? I've heard nothing to me to suggest that they are. I mean, it would have to be them having significant interest and wanting to come down on a price, because I just don't think that the Chiefs want to tie up a lot of money in an older player. So you're looking at the guys who are 28 and under. Curtis Samuel's 27. I mean, I think that would be, kind of age-wise, the tightest fit. Ryan Tracy and I were just talking about Braxton Berrios. I know that's a guy that he likes. That obviously could be a possibility, but again, I think it's a price consideration. The one name that we've heard a lot about from a fan perspective, but I haven't really heard, from One Arrowhead Drive and any considerations there, is Hollywood Brown and Marquise Brown, and as if that's a possibility. And I'm not, until I hear it from somebody connected to the Chiefs, I'm just going to say that he's probably not on their board. It's to me, I just don't see the Chiefs' interest in him, and maybe just because of the way that he's kind of left the two organizations that he's been with. I mean, obviously, I think there's a lot of things to like about Marquise Brown, but I just haven't seen any evidence that the Chiefs have a lot of interest. So you go through that, and hey, Cedric Wilson's 28 in Miami. I think he would be a good fit. Chiefs might get there eventually. Who else is out there? I mean, I could also honestly, I could see McCole Hardman coming back at an affordable deal. So let's see what happens. And I think that the real interesting piece to still have, Brandon, is what's going to happen in the next, I guess we'll say 20 hours, because teams are going to have to get under the salary cap by Wednesday afternoon. So the cuts are not done. Some teams are still going to have to make a move. And Nick, we'll probably get this question a little bit later, and so maybe I'll hopefully be able to get his comments on it, because we were talking earlier this afternoon, and both of us are going to be watching Los Angeles, the Chargers, to see who and what they're going to do, because they've got Mike Williams, they've got Keenan Allen, they've got a couple of guys that might get released over there. So, and Mike Williams, I think the Chiefs would absolutely have interest in. Keenan Allen, too. I mean, I think obviously there's always going to be some injury concerns and age concerns with Keenan, but that's a heck of a receiver right there. So I think the Chiefs would be interested. But that's the only thing I can think that could really change, Curtis Samuel maybe being the next target, would be that there's somebody that the Chiefs really like who becomes available in the next 20 hours. It could be, and obviously you can't rule out trades. That's always a possibility, especially when you've got, you've got L'Jarius Sneed that's on the market, and maybe you get a deal done. Player per player trades are hard to do, but it's always possible. But as of right now, Tuesday night, 7/19, I'd say Curtis Samuel would be your top target that's out there left. Just let's see what happens, Wednesday afternoon, between now and Wednesday afternoon, and that there is anything else that pops up. Scott, thank you very much for the support. I really, truly appreciate it. Thanks for supporting the channel. That is very kind of you. Feels like Sneed's smoke is slowing. Is it possible Sneed, not the Chiefs, are finding what they thought they could? Possible deal gets done. I tell you what, that's the L'Jarius Sneed conversation and kind of buzz, or lack thereof, has really been the most surprising thing to me in the last, 30 hours or so, since the beginning of all this. Really thought that there would be more L'Jarius Sneed trade buzz, and seeing a lot of teams who've been connected to L'Jarius in trade talks, finding their own corners. I mean, Detroit seems to be trying to sign every living corner they can find and not making a deal for L'Jarius Sneed. So that's a team that's obviously gone out of their way to find some guys, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't still interested in L'Jarius, because Sneed is in a different ballpark than all of these other players that are going by the wayside in free agency. The cost and the market on the free agent market hasn't been extraordinary. Tennessee, another team that's been, connected with the Chiefs, and certainly seems like maybe one of the teams that has been the hottest on him, has a woozy, they signed him yesterday at $12 million per. That's the biggest annual average value deal that's been done so far in free agency, excluding a guy like Jalen Johnson that, was franchise tagged and got his deal done with Chicago. I mean, there hasn't been a ton of big money thrown out there on the free agent market. And, once you get to Wednesday and Thursday, I mean, teams are now starting to get a little bit more frugal. So is there a team that's still out there looking to give L'Jarius Sneed $18-19 million at 27 plus the trade compensation they're going to get to the Chiefs? I don't know. I mean, my feeling all along was that if we started getting closer to the beginning of the new league year on Wednesday, and a L'Jarius Sneed trade wasn't done, and we weren't hearing a lot of noise, it was going to tell me that the market might be coming closer to the Chiefs number. The Chiefs have a number. I don't know what it is. They haven't told me, but the Chiefs definitely have a number with which, if they could live with and keep L'Jarius Sneed. Now, it's just not at the top of the market. And, I've had, some people ask about why. So this is going to be just a little bit of a detour about why that the Chiefs maybe wouldn't be interested in paying L'Jarius. And, and the answer is pretty easy. It's a short answer, and it's Trent McDuffie. because even though you've got, 2 more years of rookie control plus the 5th-year option on Trent McDuffie, if you sign L'Jarius Sneed long term, and especially a deal like he wants, that would be a 3 or a 4-year deal, then you're talking about the L'Jarius and the Trent McDuffie, his 5th-year option and extension overlapping with each other. And I know everybody wants to talk about 24 and not worry about 25, 26, and 27, but that's what Brett Veach and Chris Shea have to worry about. They have to worry about making the pluses and the minuses all add up. And so when you take the Mahomes contract and you take the Jones contract and you stack those on top of, 19 million a year for L'Jarius Sneed, and honestly, Trent McDuffie is going to make more than L'Jarius Sneed. And and the Chiefs clearly have made a priority, and I can't argue with them because I think Trent McDuffie is going to be everything that L'Jarius has been. He might be better than L'Jarius, and he's younger than L'Jarius. So if you're going to give a deal to one of those two guys, that's who it's going to be. So I think there's just there's a reality of business that's been made there. So that's why the Chiefs have their number for L'Jarius. A big part of it is because, they know they're going to have to pay Trent McDuffie before the L'Jarius Sneed contract would be done. So they just had to get L'Jarius to a number. Is the market coming back down? And that's kind of, Scott, gets to the heart of your question, is the market coming down to where L'Jarius is like, wait a minute, I could maybe get a ton of money to go to a team that's a 500 team or worse than that, but maybe I could get close to the same money and stay in Kansas City and win a bunch of games and maybe win some rings. So let's see what happens. But I do think there's going to be some resolution pretty quickly. I still don't think this is anything that extends out to, the draft or certainly beyond. I think that the Chiefs want resolution. I think L'Jarius wants resolution. So I still think something gets done in the next few days. I'd be surprised if it doesn't. And if it does go beyond that, I think it's actually only good news for the Chiefs, because I think at that point you're going to see more and more teams drop out and it just becomes a little bit easier. So let's see. There's still a lot of moving parts to all of this, but I can't tell you for certainty for sure where L'Jarius is going, if he's going, if he's staying. We'll see. But the Chiefs have everything is available to them right now. I just don't see them signing L'Jarius at a top of the market deal. But if the market comes down to them, it could still happen. So let's see. Brandon, you may, let's see, it's kind of in the same lines there. See it as if they don't get what they want as fair compensation for him, then they will return to either sit out or play on the tag. I think both of those are pretty unusual. I can't see any value for L'Jarius sitting out. And the last thing the Chiefs want would be for him to play under the tag, because that tag is so big. So I don't think it'll happen. I think at some point, if the Chiefs were put into a situation where they thought that was a possibility, I think they would just probably come down to what they were asking for as a trade price. So we don't really know what the Chiefs are looking for. If I were them, sure, I'd shoot for the moon. I'd be asking for, something in the first round, late first, if you can, and hope that you can just get something early in the second. I think teams around the league would tell you if the Chiefs got a top 50 pick for L'Jarius, that'd be a really good deal. So, if they had to, drop their price to get a deal done because L'Jarius wants more money than they're willing to pay, maybe that'll happen. So we'll see. Jeremy's going to go watch the franchise. That's okay. I forgive you. And actually, I was so late, Jeremy. Hey, you could probably almost come back in now. So that's okay. John, just saw Mahomes restructure gives the Chiefs $21.6 million in cap space. And yes, Mahomes, his roster bonus this year was going to be $34.9 million. Chiefs have an option of converting any or all of that into a signing bonus and then prorating it over the next 5 years. They chose $27 million of that 34.9 to convert into the signing bonus and then spread it out over the next 5 years. So that drops his number down 5.4 plus the remaining almost 8. So guess, that's going to drop his number down this year. Well, obviously drops it down by 21.6 million, but it's going to obviously, and that's going to push that, doing math very, very poorly off the top of my head. It's what, 6.4 million. Thank you very much. They'll be pushed up into next future years. So it will hit the cap in a different way, obviously, but that's just a pro forma stroke of the pen. Mahomes doesn't even have to be involved in it. The Chiefs can just sign it and be done with it. So, and typically what Brett Veach wants to do is just convert as little of that as possible each year, the mandatory little amount that they need to. Now, do the math. I mean, you can talk about 21.6 from Mahomes that they've just created. They've got the 19 million tied up in the franchise tag with L'Jarius. I mean, if they trade him, that's $40 million in cap space. They need some of that for Wednesday because with Chris Jones's extension and some of the other deals that they've done the last couple of days, my understanding is that they're just a little bit over the cap, for starting the new league year. So they won't have 20. My belief is that they're going to have a little bit less than 21.6. So we'll see if it's under 20 or not. Probably around that ballpark. We'll see how long it takes from the NFLPA to update their numbers, but that's where I'm guessing that will be as far as how much cap space that they will have. And then obviously resolving the L'Jarius Sneed situation will be the other question. John's second question, Hollywood Brown or Curtis Samuel? Go back with what I started off with. I think Curtis Samuel is the name to watch right now. So we'll see what happens. Sharon, agreeing with all the above. Matt and Dick, thoughts on free agent wide receivers remaining in his KC market? No action suggested or no. I mean, I'm going to save this, Sharon, and come back to it when Nick gets in so he can give his perspective on it. I'll stick with what I said at the top of the show. So, Anonymous saying the Hollywood Brown that tweeted moments after the Mahomes restructure broke. I have not seen that yet, so I'll have to look that up and see what Hollywood said. Probably, I'm assuming there must be some gulag or a bag of money and saying, "Come get me." I know it's very exciting here watching me turn on Twitter to see what Hollywood had to say. He's ready for takeoff. Very, very well timed message there from Marquise Brown. I can understand that why he would be ready for takeoff. We'll see what happens. I still think there's a lot more buzz and a lot more noise that I'm hearing with connections to Curtis Samuel at this point than I am with Marquise Brown, but we shall see, as I keep saying. Brandon, with Brian Burns' deal, that's what most thought Sneed would bring. Not sure right now. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, I'm still of the thought, and I've been all along that hey, if you can get a second at plus for Sneed, a second and a fifth, second and a sixth, I mean that's pretty good. That to me, especially if you can get a top 50 pick. That would be the ideal to me. I mean, if the Chiefs get anything more than that, Brett Veach is able to get a one for Sneed back. I think that's a slam dunk. That's about the best you can possibly get done, other than actually signing L'Jarius back yourselves, which I think is still, one of the best ways to go. L'Jarius is just too good of a player. So we'll see. But we've got our friend, our guest.
Hey, Matt.
Coming in. Nick, how are you tonight?
You like it? I'm just kidding. Still getting over the cold or allergies or whatever it is. But I bought that one special for the first Super Bowl.
That was very appropriate. Very nice.
I got a special T-shirt for free agency. Just free agency.
I see the hard
pass. It's a hard pass. Hard pass.
That's very appropriate because I am going to ask you the tough question of what hard passes are you giving to wide receivers in the free agent market?
Okay, let me look. Thoughts on
because most of what we've been bidding the questions tonight, Nick, have been Curtis Samuel or Hollywood Brown.
So Hollywood Brown, we talked about him on our podcast, 41 as the mic a couple weeks ago.
We did.
He didn't show a lot of competitiveness.
We got a lot of trouble. We got a lot of trouble for that. Well, I did at least.
Why? What'd you do? Matt?
I said something. I guess I didn't get in trouble for Hollywood Brown. I guess I got more in trouble for Calvin Ridley, not thinking that was a good fit for the Chiefs. But
Well,
you're getting ready to say about something about Hollywood Brown that I completely agree with, by the way. So I will stop interrupting and let you do it.
No, you're fine. Don't worry about it one bit. I want us to be on the same page, all of us, and each one of you listening. So so whatever we got to do to get to that, let's get to that. With Hollywood Brown, like the question I've asked myself whenever I was watching it, his tape didn't show a lot of competitiveness. Yes, he has the speed you want and the speed you would like to see in the offense, and he's got what they want to threaten deep. Now, he wasn't fighting for the football. He was nervous about taking some hits over the middle and things of that nature from a competitive perspective that I was disappointed in watching. But the question the Chiefs have to ask themselves is, was that because of the situation where he's in Arizona, or is it something that when he comes to Kansas City it'll be different, if that makes sense? So if he comes to Kansas City, does that competitiveness that he had at Oklahoma come back? So that's really the question the Chiefs got to ask themselves, especially if they spend anything more than $10 million a year like they did for Valdez-Scantling, who also didn't compete routinely for the football until it became playoff time. So that's the biggest question I think they've got to have an answer to on that front. In terms of Samuel can easily come in, fit as a slot receiver, do a good job over the middle, be able to run the routes that they need to over the middle, work over the middle, create separation. And he's already worked in the scheme last year with Eric Bieniemy. So, I mean, they know for the most part what they would be getting. I'm not opposed to either of them. I just want to see them add wide receivers that weren't on the roster last year. That's number one for me. So I would just like to see them take a couple of sign a couple guys. I'm not upset that they haven't done it yet, but I mean, I think there's a number that they're probably set on wide receiver wise that they're comfortable spending per player. And as long as they get somebody that can be a good mentor to Rashee Rice at the end of the day, like I've said previous times, that's really what you're paying for, is somebody that can help mentor him as a route runner, as a receiver, as a player, to help make him better. That's really what I feel like you're truly investing in.
Also interested to bring it up with you because another name that a lot of people are asking about is Josh Reynolds. What do you think about Josh Reynolds?
Yeah, I mean, with Reynolds, when I looked at him, I just wasn't the biggest fan of his lack of separation and what he could do overall. I understand the Chiefs have been interested before, or there's speculation that they've been interested before, but like when I watched him, I just wasn't really. I want to see something different on this roster than what they already have, and I felt like with Reynolds, they already have a lot of his skill set on the roster this past season, to where I don't think you're gaining anything different than what you had, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I gave a hint earlier to everybody because you and I were talking earlier today about the receiver situation, and that we both want to see what happens in the next, as I once again try to do some math off the top of my head, 19 and a half hours, I guess it is, when the new league year starts, because teams will still have to get under the salary cap. There will probably be some more names added to the free agent market at wide receiver. And I mean, I know you and I really are interested in what happens with the Chargers, and you've had your eye on Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for a long time.
Right. Yeah, I've been keeping tabs on what they will or won't do. So I'm hoping they let them go find a new forever wide receiver home. But I mean, we'll see. Because with Mike Williams, yes, he had the ACL tear and he's coming off that, but that's an opportunity where you can get a prove it deal for him and have a big bodied receiver. So you just got to kind of see where his rehab's at, and it fits what you're wanting to do financially. And when you're thinking about this again on the Chiefs roster, you're trying to find people that can help you down the stretch, November, December range. So that's when you need people to be healthy. That's when you need them to be in sync. That's when you need this team and the scheme to be in rhythm. So you're really, when you're building this roster, you're building up to those points and those moments.
And I'm glad I got to point to John here, because John is pointing out what I have finally figured out I need to crystallize as far as my message goes. The Chiefs are not looking for a number one receiver. The Chiefs have a number one receiver. And whether you want to say it's Travis Kelce or you want to say it's Rashee Rice, I mean, Rashee Rice is going to be, I mean, unless he gets hurt this year, Rashee Rice is going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. That's a number one receiver. So, I mean, is he going to be a 1,600-yard receiver and just a pure dominant source? I can't guarantee you that. I don't know. I don't know. But, you know, even if he only improved 5%, Rashee Rice is going to be a 1,000-yard guy. You're not, if the Chiefs, you're not banking on or even thinking that, you know, you're assuming even that you're going to get a 1,000-yard receiver in free agency. I mean, you'd love to, that'd be great, but that's not what the Chiefs need. That's not, you know, they're not needing to overpay for somebody to hope that they're a number one receiver, when they really just need to appropriately pay for a guy to be the number 2 or number 3 that they really need.
Right.
So you're saying I'm not completely crazy?
I mean, the Chiefs offense overall, like you and I chatted about off air. I mean, Travis is still technically the 1. He's still the number 1 wide receiver. Rice is the 2, and whoever you get is going to be 3, 4, option wise. So you're just trying to build, in my opinion, you're trying to find as many athletic receivers who are versatile enough to be able to beat press coverage or are really good at zone. And you're trying to split it 50-50 to where you have at least half your roster that can beat press if they need to. Half they're really good at zone. If you have receivers who are both, then they're, you know, then you get them with all the might that you can and add them to your roster. But then also you want a certain level of speed from 1 or 2 of the guys that can threaten deep and force the safeties to stay back, so everything else can be open over the middle. And the addition of Irv Smith, despite the people that came into my mentions today, what I watched on tape from him last year is a very athletic tight end that has tight end 2 ability athletically for the Chiefs scheme and for what the Chiefs want to do. Because when people come in the comment section and say to me, well, he was always hurt in Cincinnati, and well, he didn't do the same thing with the Vikings. Those are completely different schemes than what the Chiefs run. So I don't care what he did at any other place. I don't care what he did at Alabama. I don't care. I am looking at who the person is as an athlete. What are they capable of? And how do those things translate to the Chiefs scheme? And a lot of that stuff translates to the Chiefs scheme. He is an upgrade over Blake Bell from what I saw on tape. Will that continue? Will that maintain? You never know. You're taking a guess. But the Chiefs have low cost and hopefully high reward from him. And if it goes the way that I saw on tape, people are going to be really happy if he stays healthy about what he could do for this team and for this scheme.
Yeah, and I want to throw another name out there too, because you and I talked about this as well, about the possibility of Deontay Johnson, and Steelers did trade him earlier today to the Carolina Panthers. That's another guy. I mean, I would have been interested in if the Chiefs were interested. Not sure how much, if any, interest that they truly had, but that was another name that could have been connected to the Chiefs, but will not be there now. And one of the comments, I'm hitting my stars inappropriately here, losing my questions. Sorry, everybody.
You're better than that, Matt.
Don't bet on it. Anonymous Mango had the question about the Chiefs both signing and drafting wide receivers, and I no doubt about that. I mean, I would expect that the Chiefs will absolutely be looking at the draft market for a receiver. Would not be surprised at all if they drafted a receiver, and that's honestly true if they, even if they were to sign 1 or 2 free agent receivers. So it wouldn't be a surprise to me at all. There were some questions, and I think I had the one flag that I think I deflagged everybody's. Oh no, here it is. It was Anonymous Mango again, talking about our good friend Nate Taylor, talking about potentially bringing in 2 wide receivers. I didn't hear what Nate had to say, but that's I'm not putting anything past Brett Veach and the Chiefs as far as they did that last year. I mean, they took multiple shots at the receiver group. It didn't necessarily work out the way that they wanted to, but I would expect them to do the same thing.
I mean, what have we been talking about on 41 is the mic for a while now? I said you want to bring in 2 veterans from free agency, and if you get a chance to draft 2 wide receivers in the draft, do it. You are trying to set yourself up for a couple years. You're trying to control the cost for a couple years to where you don't want wide receiver to be a problem. I mean, think about when the Chiefs had to rebuild the offensive line. They got Joe Thuney on the first day of free agency once it officially started. Went out and got him, boom, done. Then they draft Creed Humphrey, and then they draft Trey Smith. And then, we go from there. But I'm saying it was in waves. It was a process. It's, that they went about it and built it. It wasn't just they got it all from free agency. They got it all from draft. That's what you have to do complimentary. You want to bring some veterans that can help mentor Rice. And also, if you get some rookie wide receivers that can help mentor them in that wide receiver room and help them grow. And then you get the right type of draft picks, prospects that you want and get them selected. And then those guys get to learn from the veterans. But on top of it, you know what your cost is going to be for 4 years with a draft pick. You know that the veterans get 2 years to mentor them. Rice is going to potentially hit the market this year. These 2, hypothetically, these 2 rookie wide receivers are going to hit the market this year. And you do it in waves, and you constantly do it to where if you can get a wide receiver every year with where that market's at of the $20 million plus, you can routinely avoid that. And then if you have to trade somebody to get picks and to create capital in another thing, that's one of the spots where you can do that. So in a long-term grand scheme of it, in my book, there are 4 positions you always invest in and you always go out and get. Quarterback, offensive tackle, defensive line, and wide receiver. Like if you work on those and you constantly keep those right, you can always stay ahead of the curve cost-wise. Where the Chiefs have the benefit right now is they're not having to pay a ton for defensive backs. They have Dave Merritt. So the question is, can Connor Embry, whoever's going to be the wide receivers coach this year, because we haven't officially seen an announcement yet, but I don't think anybody's leaving of what each person's role is. That's where if you can start to turn that into gold, then that's where you really maintain the cost, and having Patrick Mahomes' contract the way that you do isn't a burden like it would be for some other teams who, have to borrow from this spot or that spot just to try to keep the status quo.
Yes, indeed. And I think it's notable you bring up the offensive line comparison. I think that's a perfect comparison because not only that, you talked about, after that Super Bowl when Brett Veach said that he was not going to let that happen to have Patrick Mahomes again and not have that kind of protection, they go out in the first day of free agency and get Joe Thuney. They trade for Orlando Brown. They draft 2 starters for their offensive line and threw all the resources they needed at it. So yeah, and receiver is certainly one of those positions that you're going to throw a dart at every single year. So we're going to get off receivers for a little bit. I'm sure we'll have more questions that come back to them later, but Sharon's asking about our good friend Nick Allegretti, because I think that I didn't see anybody last night, Nick, that was upset about Nick Allegretti leaving. They were disappointed because Allegretti's earned a lot of fans in Kansas City the last few years. But I just saw a lot of people happy that Nick Allegretti got that deal in Washington. And I think we're probably both the same way because Nick earned it. And after getting injured in the Super Bowl, I was worried about whether it was going to happen for you this year.
Yeah, I mean, with Allegretti, like you said, he's a good dude in the locker room. He's very respectful. He'll take the time to chat, and you can chat ball with him and everything. And he's just a down to earth guy. But most offensive linemen are. So that's totally to be expected. And defensive linemen for the most part are too. So yeah, and people heard his story. With that he's got his family, and his family's going to be taken care of with that money now. And they can live comfortably for hopefully quite some time on that. And as more than anybody else, having him having his kid, his kids, it felt like that he was more worried about providing for them down the road, it seemed like, than just, hey, I just want to make some money. But I think he's at the point where, hey, he's won multiple Super Bowls. He wants to build his own legacy, and check mark wise, he's, checking things off the box.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most offensive lineman things that you can get. Because I remember last year talking to Nick, he was at an autograph signing up in Liberty, Missouri, at the Shop Mo Sports. And after the autograph signing, he was getting into the truck and driving back to Chicago with his dad because his wife, Christina, had just had the twins and was back in Chicago. And he had that autograph signing, was the last thing he was going to do. And he moved with all his stuff, and his dad helped him haul it back to Chicago because he wasn't sure he was coming back to Kansas City.
Right.
So, that's the life of a football player. Sometimes you just don't know if you're coming back. And so Nick and his dad drove the stuff all back and everything. And a couple of months later, back in Kansas City. But knowing what Nick has been through and everything and how hard he's worked, I think you should be happy for him. But Sharon's question, I should get to eventually, Nick, is do they need to replace Nick Allegretti? Because I mean, right now, Mike Caliendo would be the next guy up. And Chiefs have invested in him. They obviously felt good about him to have him on the roster the entire season. I don't know if you've seen enough from Caliendo to believe that he's ready to step into any one of those starts as a starter for an extended period of time if you need him. But that's where the Chiefs might be, right?
If only there was a Week 18 game.
There is a Week 18 game you can always look at,
where the Chiefs magically kept putting players at different spots to see how the offensive line looked, with each player at positions they typically didn't play. If you could do that, I bet it gives you an idea of them testing out what type of versatility they had against a starting NFL team. But yeah, no, I mean, yes, then they're going to need to add on, because that's the other thing. You're going to, right now, you don't definitively know what's going to happen with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith next year. And Trey Smith's agent right now has seen the guard market, and if Trey gets to a Pro Bowl this year,
yeah,
he's going to get $20 million on the open market next year. Like, they're going to have to figure something out with that, if they're going to keep him or if they're going to find his replacement. So that may be what this draft is yeah, they're the versatile one that can play guard or center, but they may have to replace one of those two guys, whether it's in season or when free agency comes next year, if the Chiefs elect to go down that road. Because the other thing they got to decide is next year, do they want to keep Joe Thuney out after this upcoming season? I'm looking at 2025. Yes, because it's 2024. My numbers, in my head are exhausted. But yeah, in 2025, when you're looking ahead there, you're going to have to decide, do you want to take Joe Thuney's money and essentially split it in half to where Creed gets it in his cap hit, Trey gets it in his cap hit, and then one of them kind of gets it more overall. And then do you have a guard replace Joe, or do you keep Joe in place and you're potentially maybe having to unfortunately replace Trey because he's going to cost too much? So that's, yes, you're gonna need to at minimum try to see if you can find an interior offensive lineman. But the kicker of it is, when you look at the overall draft, you need receiver. If you can get defensive line, you need defensive line. May need to invest in a cheap running back with one of those picks, offensive tackle, and then you just keep going down that list. And there's a lot of depth that you probably are wanting to get to keep cost control for a very minimal picks right now.
Yeah, and you touched on the subject, and I'm going to skip ahead to a question here and I talked a little bit about this before you got here, Nick, in relationship to L'Jarius Sneed, and the Chiefs trying, if they wanted to keep L'Jarius and why they might not be choosing to keep L'Jarius. And a big reason why would be it's tough to keep L'Jarius Sneed is that, if you extended L'Jarius right now with what he wants, which is obviously a 3 or 4 year contract. And I know L'Jarius' agent, you would rather have 4 years. You're going to be overlapping into the extension for Trent McDuffie. And Trent McDuffie is going to make every single dollar that L'Jarius is making, if not more. And he is younger. So it would be hard to have two guys like that at the same position making that kind of money. I mean, you can't always make the dollars and cents work. And Dez is asking here about, extending George Karlaftis, and you're still a year away from being able to do that. Next year would be the first time that you could talk about extending Karlaftis and McDuffie, and they obviously both have fifth-year options as well. But you bring up, I mean, you've got Nick Bolton, Trey Smith, and Creed Humphrey that are eligible for extensions right now. Yeah. And the Chiefs would like to try and get something done with at least one of them. The dream would be two, but at least one of them. So then you have a franchise tag that you can use on somebody as well. I mean, juggling all those pieces is hard, Nick. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, GMs make a lot of money. And why Brett Veach has like 18 people that work for him and Chris Shea, because you've got to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Chiefs had to make a decision a couple of years ago. Were they going to pay Tyreek Hill or were they going to pay Chris Jones? So they had to make that decision, and then when they did, they ended up paying Chris the money instead of Tyreek, and took a little bit longer than probably Chris wanted, but he got another contract with him, and Tyreek didn't get that. And the Chiefs were able to come away with 2 Super Bowls and a lot of valuable assets, with some of those being, people that we name on a weekly basis. They were able to end up drafting. But you got to have that number of draft capital to really set yourself up for these type of runs. If you want to, constantly go to the AFC Championship, if you want to go back-to-back Super Bowls or three-peats, then you have to have enough draft picks to be able to hopefully hit on every other one in some way. And when I mean hit, I'm not saying an all-pro or superstar, but I'm saying a contributor, maybe a couple starters and a couple contributors or role players. And so the Chiefs are able to do that, because whenever you're getting Isaiah Pacheco, who's your starting running back in the 7th round, you're doing something right. So, I mean, the organization's identified for the most part what they want in a player, what characteristics they want. It's just a matter of getting themselves as many picks as possible to get it done. So, yeah, George Karlaftis, for me, that's a much more down the road problem. I know it sounds weird to say, but that's a year 4, maybe even year 5 problem. If you have to do the 5th-year option for him and McDuffie, because you're going to be having to take care of if you want to keep the other picks, and keep them maintained, you're going to have to do that even potentially before those guys. So, I mean, I'm sure the Chiefs have it down to a science where when they're looking at it by year, this is how many guys that they can pay and still maintain Mahomes here and maintain this there and maintain that there. So, yeah, it's to maintain the level of success that fans are expecting and the Chiefs want. That's a juggling act that I don't envy on a regular basis, because, man, if you have one bad draft, I can set you back a couple of years, and then you really got to go spend in free agency.
That is true. You are correct. And the Chiefs, I mean, they've been in that spot. They've been in spots where, hey, the draft didn't pan out, and then you got to go fix it. And they haven't had that in a while, so you got to take advantage of it while you can. But You are absolutely correct. And part of that's having the draft capital to continue to do that. And one of the ways you get draft capital, it's moving on from guys periodically that's going to hurt and getting draft picks for them. And if that ends up what happening with L'Jarius, I mean, that is sometimes, unfortunately, the cost of doing business and the cost of trying to build a dynasty. And Chiefs are trying to do that. Odell has a question. Chiefs can't find $5 million for Willie. I mean, that comes down to it again too, Nick. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's a couple of things here. I mean, one, if the Chiefs wanted to find $5 million for Willie Gay, they could have. They chose not to. I mean, they prioritized, and there's no doubt they prioritized Drew Tranquill over Willie Gay, and I cannot disagree with them. Can you?
I mean, yes, Drew Tranquill is going to be the starter. Drew Tranquill is a more complete player. Where Willie Gay really helps him out is when he's in the spy position. But, I mean, I'm just telling you, I think Willie thought he was getting a lot more in the open market than what he got. I genuinely believe he thought he was going to get double that and longer years, personally. He didn't. So, He's got to go out and he's going to have to prove it in another scheme and with another team and in another conference that what type of player that he believes himself to be. And I don't know if the Saints was the road to go down, but that's the option that he had and the option he took. And so, don't get me wrong, Willie Gay, he's always been, kind to us in the locker room, really respectful guy. And so I'm not saying anything bad about him in any way. He's insanely talented athletically. I just feel like Bolton, Chanel, and Trank will all just have a better grasp of the scheme and what's required of them and where they're supposed to be and why they're supposed to be where they are at specific times.
Yeah, I mean, there's value in a weak side linebacker like Willie, and obviously, I think there's value in what Steve Spagnuolo has praised him for, which is that his role as an energy giver. I mean, you haven't heard that phrase enough from the Chiefs and the Chiefs defensive coaches about him. That's a compliment. It is. But Drew Tranquil, I mean, between the additional leadership that Tranquil provides, his ability to play all three positions, especially his ability to back up Nick Bolton, I mean, that's just too critical there. So there was a priority made. Stuckey's asking, and I think it's a legitimate question, who is going to be the guy replacing Willie Gay? We'll deal with the first half. There's another question about running back, but we'll start with the linebacker spot because Chiefs, obviously, we know Brett Veach. He'll be looking at the other waves of free agency. There might be a really nice linebacker, like, say, Drew Tranquil was last year, sitting out there available in a late wave of free agency that you can pick up. But, I mean, the Chiefs also have a couple of young guys that they really like that they've brought along, undrafted guys. They've had Jack Cochran, but I don't think is the guy that's up next. I think the guy that's up next is Cam Jones. That's the player that really kind of fits the Willie Gay model. I mean, he is more of a weak side guy, a lot of athleticism. I mean, he was undrafted, so I'd have to put him into kind of, poor man Willie Gay kind of category. And we don't know a lot about him yet because, he was just an undrafted guy last year. He had some injuries, but Chiefs speak pretty highly of him. And whether or not I don't think he's not going to be the starter, but he could be the fourth guy this year.
Yeah, I'll just say bluntly, I have no idea right now.
That's completely fair.
Technically doesn't start till tomorrow at 3 p.m. It still technically hasn't started. I know it feels like it's already almost a week into it with how they approach it and how many guys get signed and just how much new news you have out there on a regular basis from the NFL and the constant updates on Twitter and wherever else. So, I mean, I get it, but I mean, again, like I said on here many times before, they're going to be adding to this roster in March and April and maybe in May, and then they'll come back again in July and August. So, I mean, until training camp really starts, I mean, we're all just throwing darts here and hoping for the best, So, I mean, I agree with Matt that, right now with where the roster's set up, Cam Jones is probably that guy, but there may be a guy in a couple weeks that has an agent that's talking to the Chiefs about another player and then mentions to them, hey,
by the way, this guy's free.
I got this guy Drew Tranquil. He'd really like to, play play with you guys, and then they work something out and it gets done, and then he becomes one of their best linebackers on the team. So I mean, you just kind of let things work themselves out. I mean, free agency is just in this. It's in these waves to where Monday was day one. That's when people overspend to get somebody that they feel is going to impact their roster. Monday is overspend day. Because there's no reason Gabe Davis should have gotten more than Marquez Valdez-Scantling to be Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That's who he is as a wide receiver. But he got $3 million more than Marquez got a couple of years ago. But that's what Gabe Davis got because the Jaguars are willing to overpay. So now they get to pay him $13 million to be slow out of his breaks sometimes, not run a full route tree and drop passes. They're like, we want this from you. We covet those type of skills in our offense. So I mean, that's why the Jaguars are going to Jaguar. But my point of it is Monday overspend day. Tuesday start to come back down to reality, but still holding out for what you can get. Wednesday, once the party officially starts and people can do what they want, maybe a team sneaks in and there's some guys are still holding out hope that hey, maybe that now that they don't have to wait and think I'm going to change on my agreement and everybody's under the salary cap now, maybe they'll give me that $13 million per year that I'm wanting, and then they find out that, well, not the case, or maybe it is the case. Somebody like the Chiefs sneak out of nowhere and sign Joe Thuney for 20 plus million or 16 APY per year when we thought that was an insane amount, and now guards are going for 20 a couple years later. So yeah, I mean, like, it's just I think by Friday is when things are starting to hit what I know Matt has called many a times on the podcast, the what is it, the bargain bin? Is that what you
bargain
call
bin?
It?
That's right.
Yeah, Fridays when it's going to start coming down to getting proper value for what a player actually is.
If Wednesday is Christmas Day when you start to open up all your free agent gifts and everything, Thursday and Friday is December 26th when you're going and you're hitting all the sales. You're trying to find something 50% off, Nick.
Yeah. So I'm looking over in the comments section. Everybody keeps talking about whatever Marquise Brown's supposedly doing on social media. So I'll check it out, Matt, while you look for the next question.
He just tweeted, but to your point about because a couple of the commenters were also mentioning that there's a report that the Chiefs will be having Boston College lineman Christian Mahogany in on a top 30 visit. Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs could absolutely be looking at the draft for another offensive lineman, another interior lineman with Nick Allegretti leaving. Would not surprise me in the least. And we had the second half of Stuckey's question that I was going to bring up too, which is that the running back spot, because you and I both feel like the Chiefs are going to add somebody at the running back position. The market for running backs during free agency so far has just absolutely amused me, because it's a bunch of teams basically abandoning their own running back and overpaying for somebody else's running back to be their starter. And I mean, I almost feel like you can pretty much go through every team that has signed a running back at a ridiculous price and just say, okay, that team is not winning the Super Bowl. That team is not winning the Super Bowl. Because I feel like if you're signing a running back for $10 million a year, you haven't figured out something pretty critical to the NFL these days.
All right, Matt, let's go. Let's do the practice. Let's go through with the running backs. I'll do it for you.
Let's do it.
There, no, go find. If you have my tweet, you remember I did the APY.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Do that.
I'll pull it up here.
I'm not going to do any theme music because I know the copyrighted thing. So I'm being mindful of that, so I apologize.
We have yet to be dinged, though, so that's okay. And if it's a really bad impersonation of the theme music, that you can get away with that.
Well, with me having the sinus cold thing, I mean that actually probably could help in this. But I'm trying to limit my coughing right now.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to be savvy enough to get it on screen, Nick, but I will try.
Oh, wow. You're going next level with the on the screen, too?
Well, I was going to try.
Okay. Well, you can just name them off if you got it.
If I can get to it. You've been too busy. We've both been too busy on Twitter.
So I'm gonna. Well, Matt's
here we go. I got it. Okay. All right. So we got Saquon Barkley, $12.4 million.
Yep.
We got Josh Jacobs. Yes.
So I'm gonna say with Barkley. Yes. Basically, the Eagles want to have with how poorly Jalen Hurts performed at various times last year. They now understand how important it was to have a truly explosive back in their backfield that can be a weapon, both run and pass. So that is why they overspent for him to come into their system. Now, the thing where it can backfire on him is, one, they got Nick Sirianni as a head coach. That's going to backfire. But two, his injury history. So if he gets hurt, then they're back to square one. So that's where I'm curious to see what running back insurance they go out and get. If they get it from, Progressive, Farm Bureau, I'm not sure. But they're going to need running back insurance for Barkley's injuries, and it's going to have to be an explosive back. So that's what I'm curious to see with that one. Next one he said was Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs, $12 million.
So Josh Jacobs, the reason they're doing that is because you could predict what they were going to do in their run game by when Jones came in versus when Dillon was in. So you knew with Dillon, okay, they're going to run power. With Jones, okay, they're going to get on the perimeter, and then they're going to run their screen passes and everything. So you knew what they were doing based on which running back was in. So what they had to do is they went out and spent on a complete running back that takes away that guesswork. You can't guess anymore. You can't key in on that anymore. So that is what they were paying for, is they were paying for you not to be able to guess as a defense what they're going to be doing or running, both in run game and part of their pass game. See, Matt, is this a fun exercise or what?
But what I love about both of those moves is that Philadelphia, and this is appropriate because Philadelphia abandoned DeAndre Swift for Saquon Barkley. Yes. DeAndre Swift is going to be the starting running back for the Chicago Bears at $8.15 million.
Yeah. The Bears just overpaid. Put that blunt. The Bears overpaid. Like DeAndre Swift, had he come in like the Chiefs scheme, would have done really, really well. But he went to an organization that had to overpay by about $2 million in APY to be able to get him. And so far, like we've talked about, those guys, each team had to overpay for him because most of the running back market wasn't expected to be for more than $10 million. But Barkley got about $2 million more. Jacobs got more than was expected. And Barkley definitely got $2 million more than expected. And then, next on there was, I didn't have him on the list, but it's probably Aaron Jones, right? At $7 million.
Yeah, well, because that was Aaron Jones signed today, right? So he goes because Green Bay signed Josh Jacobs, so he's going to go be the starter in Minnesota for $7 million.
And what he does is he gives whoever the heck is going to be quarterback next year, from either who they draft, more than likely who they draft, or Sam Darnold. He gives them an explosive weapon that can be that dynamic runner that they desperately need because they don't have a premier quarterback yet. So that's why whenever people are talking about maybe the Vikings will trade Justin Jefferson, that I saw that keep being speculated on Twitter. It's like, no, they're going to get a quarterback. They're going to draft their next quarterback if there's somebody that they really like, and they're going to put a lot of dynamic players around them so that they have an offense that can go with a really good defense that they're building up in Minnesota with the players that they're signing that fit what Brian Flores' mentality is. So it just, each thing's got its purpose. Each team's got the way that they're building. And when you watch the way teams go about the puzzle pieces, if you understand the scheme of what they're trying to put together, like, for example, the Eagles are trying to move on from, Reddick and Sweat. And then, and that's because Vic Fangio is trying to build his scheme, and a lot of those guys don't fit it.
Then you have Tony Pollard going to Tennessee for $8 million, replacing Derrick Henry, who is going to Washington or Baltimore for $8 million a year.
Yeah.
Is Tony Pollard an upgrade from Derrick Henry?
I don't know if he's ever going to recover from the ankle injury he had, because he used to be more running back, but he didn't recover from his ankle this past year. And so you're banking on your trainers helping him get to that point, or that he's somehow going to regain that fountain of youth. And with Derrick Henry's taking so many carries that, like, he's like, if you had a tire, think of it as a brand new tire. Derrick Henry has the little metal spikes pointing out of it because the tread is so worn on the tire. And so, like, I mean, he's not as explosive after his foot injury a couple years ago either.
I've done that, Nick. I've worn my tires down that far before. I know you are literally driving on borrowed time. And Derrick Henry has been a fantastic running back, but you're right. With his age and mileage, you're going to end up on the side of the road at some point with Derrick Henry.
You're going to need AAA card and services to come help you with roadside assistance.
Now, the great thing is that, then you have, let's see, Antonio Gibson left Washington to go to New England. So Washington signed Austin Eckler to replace him. So Los Angeles then went and got Gus Edwards to replace him, because I guess apparently Harbaugh is going to run a 1940s single wing offense of some sort, and just...
The Gus Edwards one did not surprise me one bit. That was the one that I'm like, that makes complete sense, because Harbaugh's he's bringing, in the words of Justin Timberlake, he's not bringing sexy back. He's bringing the run game back. And that's what Jim Harbaugh is going to do. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, the Chiefs are going to have to, over the next couple of years, at their one tech spot and their defensive ends that they bring in, they're all going to have to be good against the run, because Harbaugh is going to rebuild that line, and he's going to run it down people's throats, and he's going to play action pass off that. So, I mean, That's what I'm saying. I'm just telling you right now, like power run game's coming back to the AFC West, and it's going to be coming out of Los Angeles. And Gus Edwards was kind of the first sign to showcase that to people.
Oh, that and they're beefing up on the offensive line. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is going to play Marty Ball this year.
Yeah.
With Justin Herbert as his quarterback.
Yeah. And the thing about the Marty Ball is Herbert can make it rain all over the field and put it right on point too.
Okay, I think we have managed to successfully completely and totally go off the rails. But you know what it's time for, Nick?
Lightning round?
Lightning round!
Lightning round!
Anonymous Mango, do you think Mahomes' restructure points towards Sneed staying, or would you sway more towards him being traded still? My answer, no impact whatsoever. You, Nick?
Look,
how's that for a lightning round answer?
I think Sneed staying here, Sneed being traded is 50-50. I think the Chiefs have in their mind a certain draft compensation that they would need to move from him. And if they don't get that, I think they're going to keep him. And I think they're going to continue to try to see if there's an opportunity for them to come to a number that's comfortable for all of them, but also allows them to still have flexibility in the long-term future of their roster.
You have probably absolutely hit on the perfect way to explain it, which is that the Chiefs have two levels of equilibrium here. They have an amount that they want in compensation, and they have an amount that they're willing to pay L'Jarius Sneed. It's when what gets to their equilibrium first is the price of L'Jarius Sneed going to get closer to where the Chiefs are comfortable with, or will the compensation that's out there get closer to what they want? It's a race.
I like races, Matt. We'll see how this one goes. I hope it's better than the Amazing Race.
But I say Mahomes restructure. No, the Chiefs were doing this regardless. It's on the calendar. It was just going to happen. So no, it to me is not an indication that the Chiefs.
And it magically happened after Chris Jones signed the paperwork.
Exactly. Yes. Just so the Katz brothers could not say, "Hey, wait a minute! You got $21 million in cap space. Give it to us."
You can do $3 million more per year.
Exactly. Second question from Anonymous Mango. Is it true that the Patriots are open to trading Juju Smith-Schuster for a 5th round pick? If so, any possibility the Chiefs bring him back? I've heard some rumors that, yes, that the Patriots are willing to maybe move on from Juju Smith-Schuster. But with that contract, Nick, I don't think the Chiefs would touch him with a 10-foot pole, as much as they like Juju.
Yeah, look, here's the reality. Any player who's on the trade block right now that isn't named Justin Jefferson, who's probably not on the trade block or is a premium player right now. They're on there so that teams can try to get under the cap before Wednesday at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
So hypothetically, say there's some players out in Los Angeles that Matt talked about earlier that go by the name of Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Mike Williams, or Keenan Allen. Right now, they're being shopped probably to every NFL team. Like, hey, letting you know this guy's available. This guy's available. This guy's available. Here's what we're thinking for this pick for that guy, this pick for that guy. And so I think most teams around the league know what players are currently being shopped, and then they're having to predict, is that player cap-wise, does the team have to release them? And if they do, why would we give away a pick that we need from draft capital perspective to get things done? So I'm just telling you, no, you don't give a 5th-round pick for Juju Smith-Schuster and the issues he's had with his knee. Now, if you get him for vet minimum, prove it, then after he got released by the Patriots, that's a whole different ballgame. Sure, bring him back. Vet minimum, incentives, do whatever you want to, go for it. But like I'm just telling you, more than anything else, like the Chiefs draft capital this year they need to add more. If you're wanting to maintain a potential for a three-peat or be able to kind of maintain this run, they need more draft capital and as much as possible over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and Juju, I mean, he has a base salary of $7 million for this season. So Chiefs, I mean, with the injury, with the knee last year causing any problems, and with the Chiefs know what his knee situation is, I think the only thing the Chiefs would be willing to do with Juju would be exactly if he becomes a free agent, signing to a $1.5 million deal with a bunch of per game roster bonuses, because that's about it. I mean, I love Juju. He's a great player, good person to have in the locker room. There's nothing bad I will say about Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm just going to say he's got a bad knee, and that's the worst thing I can say about him. Been no movement at all on left tackle. Could someone like Tyron Smith come a bit cheaper? I don't know if Tyron Smith would be cheap though.
We're at the point where the decision, like the tackle market, it's not who the Chiefs can go out and get. You're waiting to get. Like you're probably waiting until before the draft when somebody's cheap, or you're waiting until after the draft whenever you don't have to worry about the comp pick formula if there's something you're after. But unless some guy gets released or they're big on David Bakhtiari, like, I mean, you're not trying to spend 12, 15, 20 million right now for a left tackle. And the problem that the Chiefs have in the grand scheme of it is they keep doing this thing where they win Super Bowls or go to AFC championships. And because of that, they can't keep getting into the top 15 to get one of those premium tackles. Like literally one of the reasons you should be thankful I am not a general manager is I would sell it all for Joe Alt right now. I would sell it all for Joe Alt. And he may not turn out to be anything like his dad. May just have his last name and look like him. But I would go full Mike Ditka draft.
I was getting ready to say you were going to go Mike Ditka and trade your whole draft.
I would do that, and that would be reckless. But I'm just saying, like, I mean, that's the level. If you want to go solve that tackle problem for the next 5 to 10 years, that's the type of stuff you're gonna have to do. So, like, for me, selfishly, and Matt already knows this because I've run this scenario multiple times on mock drafts. If you could get a first round pick for L'Jarius Sneed, which I don't think you're going to, but if you could, that would help tremendously in being able to try to move up to get Joe Alt. And I'm not giving up on the Joe Alt dream, no matter how unrealistic it is. And I think I have a better chance of winning the lottery than the Chiefs have of getting Joe Alt. But I'm not giving up on that dream because that gives me something to live for, Matt.
Well, if you win the lottery, then you could buy into the Chiefs franchise and then help, go get Joe Alt in free agency in a few years.
Oh, I doubt Clark and the family's ever going to let that happen. That guy, no thank you.
Oh, dear. I'd let you in for sure.
Well, I appreciate it.
Mike wants to know, what hurts more, loss of Allegretti or Gay?
Oh, I'm happy for both of them to get another opportunity. I don't really.
There you go. Both teams win. You just want both teams to win. Everybody be happy.
Yeah, I mean, Willie Gay's getting a payday that he's hoping to parlay into a bigger deal next year, and then Allegretti got the 3-year payday that he wants. I do find it interesting, though. Think of how many contracts have been signed or agreed to terms, not signed, but agreed to terms. How many have been agreed to terms? And most of them are like 3-year deals. I find that really interesting. So it seems like agents these days really don't want they want their client to get as many opportunities now in the open market as they can. And so I don't know. I find that interesting that that's what the new trend is starting to become. And could there be a 4-year and 5-year in the contract? Yes. But that's to get that APY up to a certain level, like what happened with Gabe Davis, because he's got 2 void years, but it's really only a 3-year deal. So I don't know. I found that trend really interesting.
You say that it makes me want to pontificate for a moment on the Chris Jones deal, because Chris is like that. I mean, Chris it's a 3-year deal, $95 million. It's basically Aaron Donald's contract. And then it just has a couple of years tacked onto the end of it for funsies and for salary cap purposes. But here's the thing that's maddening about that contract to me, Nick, is that if this was going to be the deal, both these sides should have done it last August. Because all the Chiefs now have done is buy Chris Jones's 30, 31, and 32 seasons, when they could have bought 29, 30, and 31. And Chris Jones got his money a year later. And I may not have been the greatest student in econ when I was in college, but I know about compounded interest. And Chris Jones just cost himself a ton of money by not getting his money a year earlier. It's like, what were these two sides doing? I don't know who's to blame. I'm sure one side was more responsible than the other. We may never know exactly who was responsible. I will probably always blame a cat's brother, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Just put you on the spot there, Nick. Your thoughts.
I mean, look, could they have used his cap hit to be lower last year to help them with potentially signing some people? Wide receiver, you bet.
I guess they didn't need DeAndre Hopkins to win the Super Bowl though. So,
but they went out and won the Super Bowl. So now they get Chris a $7 million cap hit this year, and so I mean we'll see who they have to walk away from next year to be able to fit Chris's cap hit in there, and if they adjust accordingly, with some of the roster bonuses and move those around like they do with Mahomes from time to time. So, yeah, I mean, what can I say, Matt?
I say you just restructure Joe Thuney to make room for everybody.
Man, Joe Thuney's done way too many restructures. Yes,
I say you just keep adding years on the Joe Thuney's contract until he's like 58, and you just Bobby Bonilla, Joe Thuney. But
oh boy.
This is a short answer question because John wants to know about Kadarius Toney if he would get cut. No.
You're okay. I thought you were gonna have more on that one.
No, I just say no. He's got a guaranteed contract. There's absolutely no reason for the Chiefs to go anywhere with Kadarius Toney until Kadarius Toney forces him to, and I don't think Kadarius is. They're going to give him a chance.
Yeah, I mean, look, right now at the wide receiver room, I mean, you don't have anybody else in there, so you might as well maintain, let them compete and work their way through training camp, and then make your decisions from there.
John wants to know, could you see the Chiefs sitting tight on wide receivers and just build the room through the draft? I mean, I can't. I think the Chiefs will absolutely add a receiver or two, whether it's free agency, whether it's trade, we'll see. But I can't see them going into the draft without making a single move. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, no, you gotta add some free agents that are hungry and really want to go chase a championship and want to chase a Super Bowl. And so, I mean, look, like we said, free agency literally doesn't start until Wednesday at 3 p.m. So just let it work itself out. Let's see who gets released before 3 p.m. on Wednesday. Maybe there's some new names, new faces out there that, the Chiefs could potentially be able to go out and get, I mean, I don't know. We'll see.
There you go.
We've already talked about who I got my eye on.
I was saying
out west. It's out west.
I was unfortunately saying we'll see about 15 times before you got here. So I think that's if I titled episodes, that would be the title of this episode. We'll see. Kathy wants to know, hello to you. Do you see Blaine Gabbert coming back? I'm probably 50-50. I mean, I can see him coming back. I can also see the Chiefs going a different direction with the backup. I thought it was really intriguing that Brett Veach, talked to us at the Combine about having a athletic backup behind Mahomes that could do some interesting things, maybe, run some quarterback sneaks when they need it, that can maybe even just run the brotherly shove, because I don't think they want anybody shoving Patrick Mahomes from behind. I could see them having somebody that they really like that could put on the field at the same time as Mahomes and run some double passes and go all Taysom Hill on the NFL. I mean, I know Andy Reid's got a few of those napkins laying around somewhere that's got some plays like that. And as much as I loved watching Patrick Mahomes run the read option in the Super Bowl, I think I was also, along with every single Chiefs fan, holding my breath watching that, because as impressive as it was also scary.
Matt, the question says for you.
Well, I was going to I wanted you to say your thoughts too, Nick, but
fine.
You don't have to. I don't want to put you under pressure.
I'll do it real quick because it's lightning round.
Lightning round.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping Drew Lock could find his way over here, but then when I saw him sign with the Giants today, I was like, that was an incredibly smart move, because he is better than Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones is like the third best quarterback in New York right now.
So I was like, that was very savvy, smart. Tip of the cap, Drew Lock. And you got Brian Daboll with you there. If you get an offensive line and a couple more star wide receivers, you're cooking. And Drew Lock could finally find himself a permanent starting spot.
That could absolutely work out for him. Sharon, Irv Smith, cushion, compliment, breather for Trav and Noah, or some new skills added to the tight end room? I think my answer, Nick, might be yes.
that it? It's all the meat on the bone.
I think he
Come
can
on,
do.
Matt.
I think he can do a little bit of it all. I mean, he's closer. I will say this because he's a littler guy. I mean, he's 6'2", 240. I mean, the track record on tight ends that size is that they're not like super huge playmakers. Doesn't mean they can't be productive players. Evan Ingram can be a productive player. Um, I just know Brett Veach has been trying to find a Trey Burton clone for like 5 years now, and thought Noah Gray might be it, but not. But you know what? Irv Smith might be. I mean, he could be a guy that you can line up literally anywhere. I think they could do some of the things that they do with Travis, even though he doesn't have Travis's size. I think there's some things that Travis does that Noah can't do. He's not like the world's super, biggest blocker in the world. So I think they're bringing him in to put him on the field in some 12 and 13 personnel situations and just take advantage of the way that teams are playing them. And if having a bunch of tight ends on the field is better than having a bunch of wide receivers, maybe that's the route Andy Reid's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, with Irv Smith athletically, like you said, you can put him back at fullback and use him out in the flats. You can and throw passes to him in the flats. You can use them on screens, whether it's tight end screen, maybe kind of the normal, like the concept of a running back screen, except it's him as a tight end. He's done wide receiver screens like he did in Cincinnati. He was really good on slants, corner routes, and he was good on crossers over the middle that he was doing. Like he can get such separation against safeties and linebackers with his athletic ability, no matter what his size is. And then he's got the athletic ability to shake a couple guys with a juke move and be able to turn a 5-yard gain into a 15-yard gain. And if he's able to stay healthy with what I saw from him on tape, I just think people are going to be really happy with what he brings athletically, what they have lacked behind Travis outside of Jody Fortson. Now, the question is, can he stay healthier than Jody Fortson? If he can, then you finally see what the Chiefs have been trying to find with the number 2 tight end. But if Smith, with what he was doing with the Bengals, he was in an offense whenever I'm watching him, like there were so many mouths to feed in Cincinnati. Because you either had to check down to Joe Burrow, you were figuring out a way to get the ball to Chase, to Higgins, to Boyd, and he was normally like the fifth. He was almost the 4th or 5th option on most plays, unless it was a design play to where they would run like 2 slants and him on a quick out, or him run a slant and then they had a crosser or 2 verticals, or how they'd go about it. But he also understood where to sit down in the red zone. He's an athletic weapon mismatch-wise in the red zone. So I'm just saying, with somebody like Andy Reid that understands how to create these matchups, I'm just telling you, like what him and Mahomes can do with that type of athletic ability, there's so much promise there. And to get it at $1.25 million, like that's what can be really fun for a lot of people down the road here if it all comes together.
Yeah, the couple deals that got done today between that and Deion Bush, I mean, very low cost, low risk investments in depth. So nothing worrisome there to me. I'm bringing up this question from Alex Nick mostly because I want to transition to another similar topic. But he says the reports that the Deontay Johnson's agent revealed that he had talked to the Chiefs about a trade, but the Steelers did not want him in the same conference. I mean, that happens, absolutely does, that you just don't want a player to go to a team that you may have to face down the road. And I want to know your thoughts, Nick, because there was a running back that we thought might hit the free agent market that I thought would be an interesting conversational fit for Kansas City. Don't know if you heard of him. His name is Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
Thoughts? Yeah,
when I saw him get traded for a 7th round pick and a coupon for $10 off at a Subway shop. That told me that they either had some concerns about where he may end up and where he fit, and they're like, we're not taking that chance, so we're going to force the path he goes to, or, well, there is no other or. It's just no. They were wanting to control where he was going to go.
They didn't. I don't think they wanted
that bat signal, and they as you'd say, they put up that bat signal, and they were. There was something they were after there.
I don't think they wanted him to end up in the AFC North or Kansas City. And those are absolutely 4 teams that probably would have been the first 4 to call Joe Mixon's agent.
Right.
But Yeah, that was a Moneyball trade. I mean, I think that all that Houston had to do for Joe Mixon was just make sure that the Bengals have their soda machine filled for this season. So, yeah, that's
We want you to pay the cost for our vending machines.
exactly. The guys need some sodas.
I want to know. I'll just say this one. I want to know what was going on behind the scenes with Deontay Johnson that the Steelers took that little in return.
I want
I
to
know
know
we don't have
too.
an answer on it, but I'm just telling you, when a team is willing to take that little for a guy, they are trying to get rid of him because they took, if I remember correctly, I think they took less for him than they did when they traded Antonio Brown away and then when they traded Martavius Bryant away.
Because I know it was they got Dante Jackson back.
Yeah, but I think he was,
but
I think he was potentially going to be a cap move anyways.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember the exact terms. It is not a.
It was a swap of a 6th and a 7th for player.
Yeah, I mean, and there were people. I mean, we had a legitimate conversation. Would you trade L'Jarius Sneed straight up for Deontay Johnson?
Oh, the Steelers gladly would have done that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you would have had to ask for, it might be a 2nd-round pick too. You might have gotten it.
I'm telling you, I'm just genuinely wondering what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah,
that got that trade facilitated like that, because that Johnson's worth more than what the Steelers got in return.
Yes. That was absolutely a just get rid of this guy. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I don't know who asked that. I don't know who said that. I don't know. But that's what it was. All right. Thank you all for answering the questions about when the draft schedule is coming out in mid-May. What else we got here, Nick? I want to make sure to see if there's any other big super questions. Well, Anonymous Mango always has some good questions. Do you anticipate the Chiefs to make a wide receiver move tomorrow? I mean, it's not 100% slam dunk, but I wake up every day expecting the Chiefs to have a new receiver, Nick.
You expect or hope?
Expect.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping they add some receivers to the mix, but I mean, it again, like I talked about earlier in the podcast, I think it all comes down to the number. Is the number the Chiefs are willing to spend on a veteran receiver? When do those players get to that number? And once they get to that number, I think the Chiefs will have another wide receiver or two here. But I personally, in my mind, I think there's a certain budget they probably got on what they're willing to spend at each spot. And my guess is that it's probably too much right now.
We've been talking about running back, and a couple of questions about running backs out there. One, how about Ezekiel Elliott to the Chiefs? And other, would we bring back Kareem Hunt? I know Kareem. Once again, I cannot believe that Kareem Hunt will ever be back with the Chiefs in any form whatsoever. Not everybody agrees with that, but I'm pretty certain it's never going to happen. But Ezekiel Elliott, I just don't think there's anything left in the tank, Nick. Hard pass. I love it.
Yeah, and in terms of Kareem's slowing down. Like the Kareem Hunt you remember from 2018, he's not playing football anymore. Like Kareem's slowed down with those injuries. He's not as explosive. He's not as dynamic as he was. That window already passed. That window already faded. And on top of it, what's interesting when you're looking at it from a cap perspective, how different this football team may be, because they're getting ready to give him they were in the ballpark to where they might give him a new deal within the next year or two because of how well he was doing, how that offense was going. And then all that transpired and he didn't get that long-term deal. So say he signs that long-term deal, I wonder where they'd be at with Tyreek Hill and Chris Jones right now. And would they be on the current trajectory to where they've won 3 Super Bowls in 5 years? And if they would have, because then here's the other kicker. Say Kareem doesn't have the incident occur, none of that situation happens, and he's on that 2018 team in the AFC Championship game. Say they win that game. Bob Sutton may still be the defensive coordinator. Steve Spagnuolo is never here. Dave Merritt's never here. Joe Cullen's never here. And then the butterfly effect just goes to an insane level of just alternate universe type stuff here. If you want to go Marvel, universe, and then you want to go Ashton Kutcher's butterfly effect, or Quantum Leap with their butterfly effect in their season finale. It's like, I'm just saying, like, it's just interesting how that one thing kind of sets a course to go this way. And so I look, Chiefs won 3 Super Bowls, so that path that they took ended up being the best one.
I mean, you make a legitimate point that if the Chiefs had won the Super Bowl in say 2021, maybe they don't win in 22 and 23.
Well, I'm saying if they won in 2018 when Kareem was there.
True.
Because as I'm saying, Bob Sutton sticks around.
That's true.
Don't bring Steve Spagnuolo, and then he doesn't bring in Merritt, and then down the road you don't get Joe Cullen as your defensive line coach.
You know what I'm saying? D Ford gets an extension.
With that back, who knows? But yeah, it might have. You never know.
But if he didn't line up off sides,
So, guys, thanks for joining our butterfly effect.
we might have to do an entire butterfly effect episode.
Sounds like fun.
Chiefs Kingdom says his son Nicholas, his 10-year-old Nicholas, is asking if the Chiefs trade. Exactly. That's why you're getting the question here. That's why you're getting the question, Chiefs Kingdom. We're getting an lightning round just for you because of that.
Lightning round.
Chiefs trade Sneed. What draft pick compensation are you expecting, or a potential player? I mean, Deontay Johnson for Dante Jackson notwithstanding, player trades are hard to pull off. So I would certainly expect if the Chiefs do trade Sneed and do get any compensation back, I'm expecting it to be draft picks. I am very modest in expectations. I think a top 50 pick plus would be fantastic. If the Chiefs can get anything in the top 50 plus a 5th and a 6th, I think that'd be great. I think Brett Veach is aiming higher. I think he probably wants a 1st. I think he probably wants top 40 plus another pick. But if he does, more power to him. But I think at the very minimum, a top 50 pick plus another mid-round, 2nd day or 3rd day pick.
Yeah, I mean, when that rumor, or not the rumor, when the report came out that most people think Sneed could be had for a 2nd-round pick, I don't think that was by accident. I think that's what NFL teams are expecting it to take to get him there and to get him on their roster. And so I think a lot of teams wanted to see how the first few days of free agency would work out and what they were able to allot or spend budget-wise for other positions that they needed. And for anybody that's got corner left and maybe with where they're at, they're like, okay, I'm just throwing out this hypothetically. Team A says, okay, we got wide receiver, offensive tackle, tight end handled in free agency. Or hypothetically, we got running back, wide receiver handled. We don't need those anymore. But we do. These players are in the spot that we want. What else can we get value? Could we get Sneed value-wise for this 2nd rounder that we'd potentially trade corner-wise? Or is there a corner that we can take and then we could hypothetically maybe get this defensive tackle at this spot or this linebacker here? So I think that's what teams are going to be evaluating probably throughout the week. And I mean, I'm sure teams have had discussions with Sneed's representation of kind of what he potentially wants in an overall contract. So I think teams have known that for a minute. It's just a matter, I think, of teams trying to make sure that they get the best value, and what they needed to fill in free agency they got done. Because with Sneed, you're not, with him being on the franchise tag, you're not losing out on him just getting traded. You know what I'm saying? He's just not going to abruptly, like hypothetically, if Chris Jones went to the market on Monday, somebody may have lost out pretty quickly on Chris Jones because of just how fast that market was going to go. And it just would have left their head spinning potentially if he got, $34 million per year from the Raiders or something like that, something ridiculous. Not saying that's what would happen. I'm saying hypothetically. So then, but with a team trying to trade, they're going to maximize value. So I don't think teams have the same level of urgency when it comes to having to involve draft capital in it versus, just having to sign somebody. Hope that made sense. But I mean, I think I would expect that the Chiefs would be locked in on a 2 and ask for a 2 and a 4, but expect a 2 and a 5. But yeah, if you can get a top 100 pick out of Sneed, if you're trading him, I think that's kind of something that you would at least need return on investment wise to make it worth it.
I mean, that's just the reality of just the market for corners. I mean, as good as L'Jarius is, and you look at the corner trades that have been done the last few years, nobody's getting back. I mean, Marcus Peters went for a third. I mean, for crying out loud. So it's just not a position that teams are willing to get. Yeah, I mean, you get some outlier trades for like safety. I mean, but even the Jamal Adams trade, for a safety, ended up being a terrible, terrible trade. So there's no parallel there really, but we'll see what happens. We'll see. That's the title of the episode, Nick.
We'll see.
Ronald Rodrigo, do you think KJ Osborne fits in with the Chiefs and Veach's contract bandwidth?
Yes. Yeah, no,
we are.
Osborne's a fit. He just has some concentration drop issues at times. So if he gets those handled, yes, he could be a piece of the puzzle. You're looking at him as like a number 3 receiver. You're not looking at him to be a 1 or 2, but he could be a part of that process and a part of that party. He's had some good games. You just have to see how he would he wouldn't be the only piece of the puzzle you're getting at receiver if you bring him in, is what I'm essentially getting at. He'd have to be a complementary piece.
I will co-sign on that. I'm kind of the same way. Just don't pay too much, but I can see it. Anonymous Mango again. Nobody said it, and I'm actually surprised about this, Nick, because the number of times that Odell Beckham Jr. has been connected to Kansas City over the last 5 years when he hasn't been available is astronomical. And now he is available, and no one's talking about it. I mean, I'm not talking about it because I think he is too old, too injury prone, too many issues, too many things going on, too much drama, too many headaches, too much everything. It's not one specific thing. It's just a lot of little things. And I just don't think that's where the Chiefs want to go. But
I think the league got to watch the tape this year, and that's why you're not hearing the buzz.
Watch the tape.
No, I'm just saying, I think the league saw it, and that's why.
Yeah. I mean, he's 30, and it shows. So there you go. Looking through, I know there's a few questions we have answered and everything, so I won't repeat it, but I'll just say, hey, we did answer some of these earlier. So, Michael, no one addressing the elephant in the wide receiver room that Connor Embry need to move Greg Lewis. Well, Greg Lewis isn't around anymore. You do have Todd Pinkston at the running backs coach, who conceivably could become a wide receivers coach. But once again, I mean, it's a catch-22, Nick. I mean, Chiefs won a Super Bowl. Connor Embry's great, right?
I feel like we talked about the coaches a little while ago with the wide receiver.
We touched on it. We did touch on it a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what the Chiefs are going to do. I mean, I expect they'll announce their coaching staff here in a couple. It could be this week. It could be next week. Should be relatively soon. They usually just announce them all at once. We'll see if there's any shuffling. I mean, there have been the last few years. I think with Pinkston, they do have somebody on staff that would make a good fit there. Connor's a young guy that they really do like. He's up and coming coach. We'll see what happens. Okay, I can tell you this will be a short lightning round. I can't see any scenario where Michael Thomas comes to Kansas City unless he's willing to sign a vet minimum deal. But I just don't see the fit there, and I think watch the tape, as you would say.
Yeah, you're not getting rid of Juwan. You're not getting rid of Juwan's contract.
Yeah, we're not even going to talk about that. Yeah, Juwan's not going anywhere. No, he's going to be a Chief for a couple more years, and then you'll figure things out. When does Mahomes throw to receivers in Texas? And do you think the Xavier Worthy hype is a smokescreen? Personally, I'd take Ladd McConkey. He is ready day one. Good, ready. I mean, Nick, you might be more ready to talk about draft receivers than I am. I'm still a little behind on that research and everything. I mean, obviously, I know Xavier Worthy. I know the hype and the deal around him and where it's coming from. That's usually in April, especially like early to mid-April is when it really gets on, because that's when, normally the Chiefs start off-season workouts. And that's when, Andy Reid has let them in the first phase just go off on their own, and Mahomes kind of sets up camp down there. So mid-April to early May, and that's when some rookies in the past couple of years have gone through down there in Texas. I would assume, because Xavier Worthy's a Texas guy, that he's going to go through Dallas and find Mahomes and throw with him. So we'll see. But I mean, and there were a few questions too about, who are the Chiefs going to take? I mean, what direction are they going to go at 32? It's way too early to even begin to think about who the Chiefs are going to take in the first round of the draft. I mean, you can obviously run some mocks, and Nick and I are doing that, but way too early to prognosticate for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mahomes and the Texas thing. What, Matt? Do you know what the results have been the 2 years they've done that?
That they what?
When they worked out down in Texas.
That the Chiefs end up drafting somebody that they
when Mahomes throws the receivers down in Texas. What have been the end results for that year?
Oh, they won a Super Bowl
Both times.
Yeah.
So just keep doing that. Just keep doing that.
Off-season workouts are for wusses. Nobody needs them. Just let the guys work on their own.
It's worked out for them twice.
Yeah, it's worked out really well. Yeah, worked out really well.
I'm saying, keep doing that part. In terms of wide receivers and everything, we've got all of April to talk about that, and half of March whenever Matt and I get to those points and in the podcast and all your Q&As. But this is free agency week right now. So, we'll see with Worthy. We'll see with Ladd. Do they both fit the scheme? Yeah, they both fit. They would both enhance the Chiefs in their offense at wide receiver. But, that's right now, that's just one of those parts of the puzzle that let's see what they get at wide receiver here in free agency, hopefully, and then kind of go from there. Because, we're trying to – it's like this big puzzle that we have on the table, and people are trying to put the centerpiece, even though you need to work on the corners on the outside first, then build your way into it. So, I hope I did a good analogy there, but if I didn't, I'm just saying it's going to take time. It's going to be a process, and it's I get all that, but let's see what holes that they fill with depth or guys that they need on this roster. Then it'll create clarity about what they were trying to improve upon, or what they feel like they need at some of those positions, or do not, or what they get and what they still don't have at those positions.
I think it's
because with Irv Smith, they got a more athletic tight end that they could have used at various points last year in key games to help kind of jumpstart the offense
perfect analogy for me, Nick. Another thing that brings us up, I just want to bring it up because Nick and I talk about this all the time.
Anonymous Mango, I now know their name.
We are schedule enthusiasts between Nick and I. So Anonymous Mango thinks Saints is going to be the week 1 matchup for the Chiefs on Thursday night. I'm pretty much, now that Baker Mayfield is signed with the Bucs, it's going to be the Bucs, but I'm not ruling out Houston. To me, Houston and Tampa are my two teams. I think Baker versus Patrick would absolutely be a fantastic storyline. CJ Stroud versus Patrick would be another fantastic storyline that I think the NFL wants to get out there. Those are two games that should be available that aren't going to be protected by the prospective networks. So, and it's a recent trend at least, but the NFL at least has been trying, it seems like, to make those opening night games as little impactful as possible, so that they're, inter-conference games. They're not divisional games. They're not, games that are going to affect playoff seeding too much. So I would expect that going forward, until they reverse course again, but I would expect it to be an AFC NFC game. And if you look at the NFC opponents, I'm going to favor Tampa, but if it's an AFC opponent, I think Houston's the one that makes the most sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on both fronts. And with the free agency moves that the Texans have made, that really hypes up some of their primetime games. So I think that's going to be a part of that could really help them be a big draw, and kind of the CJ Stroud versus Mahomes and trying to set up that rivalry helps a great deal.
I want to bring this up because I think it's interesting, not because it's going to happen, but where did I lost the question? No, there it is. Casey Harold, good, proud member of Chiefs Digest on YouTube. Where did the 5th round comp pick come from? That came from your good friend Andrew Wiley signing with the Washington Commanders last year. And I say that just to bring up, because it's going to change. It's very, very early, but the folks at Over the Cap have their compensation picks for 2025 running right now. And right now, I mean, if free agency was over right now, which it's not, the Chiefs would have three comp picks coming back, Nick. They would have a sixth for Nick Allegretti, a seventh for Tommy Townsend, and a seventh for Willie Gay. They'll probably lose all three of those. I mean, there will probably be signings that push those down the road, and the Chiefs will might have an acquisition or two that might eliminate one of those. But hey, it's never too early to start looking at 2025 comp picks, right, Nick?
Dude, when I keep seeing updates on my timeline about comp picks after every single signing, I'm like, why? Why are you wasting your time? Show back in May when it'll be set in stone after the formula is done and over with. Because all I ever hear, man, is like, I'll hear people say, well, if they lose this guy, then they'll get this comp pick. And I'm like, there's like 5 guys that may get signed at that time that just completely eliminate that, and it doesn't matter. So like, I don't really care about comp picks till May, till I can see the full chart and who canceled out who and go from there. Until then, it's just somebody just trying to pass the time.
Yeah, because I mean, until early May, picks still, the signings still count towards the compensation formula. So, yeah, it is way too early. And like I said, Chiefs have 3 right now. They might not have any by the time it's all done and said. So, yeah. Once again, title of this episode, folks, we'll see. I'm trying to find the best question to go out on, Nick, because there's a couple here. Maybe we might even just have 2 more. This one I do think is kind of amusing. Michael, Chiefs have stepped in front of Buffalo a couple of times in the draft to get someone that they wanted. Did they do that with us this year with Xavier Worthy? I mean, I get the hype, and we had a couple of Xavier Worthy kind of mentions tonight. I get the hype and everything because of the speed numbers and everything. I mean, speed's not everything. You got to be able to change direction. You got to be able to take a hit. There's a few other things that I worry about with Xavier Worthy. So to me, if Buffalo wants to go up and get Xavier Worthy in front of the Chiefs, I would have no problem with that. But your mileage may vary.
All I know is free agency officially starts on Wednesday, 3 p.m. Like in the draft. Like in the overall world, I know everybody's hyped up about the draft, but like it's still more than a month away, man. There's a lot of stuff that's going to change in between now and then. I don't know. I guess I know it sounds bad of me to say, but I just personally have a certain threshold of hypotheticals that I'm willing to go through, and then once I reach it, I'm kind of like, all right, dude. Like, I mean, this, helped pass the time a little bit, but it didn't get us anywhere we needed to actually go. It's like sitting in a rocking chair, We sat in a rocking chair to kind of, give us some movement, pass some time, maybe get some steps in type of thing. But at the end of the day, it didn't really, you kind of burn a lot of energy on that one.
Okay, we're going to go one last question here, and I bring this one up because it kind of fits in with a crazy idea I have, Nick, that I don't know if L'Jarius Sneed and his agent would go for, but Combat Medic wants to know, could Chiefs just re-sign Sneed to basically a 3-year deal that they could get away from the year that you would have to extend McDuffie? I mean, that would be ideal. I mean, but I think there's another outside the box possibility that if you're the Chiefs, that maybe you could convince McDuffie about and his agent. I don't know. But, we're talking about being able to hit free agency again. I mean, if L'Jarius Sneed signs a 3-year deal, he'd hit free agency at 30. If he signs a 4-year deal, he hit it at 31. And that third contract at 31 probably won't be a great contract. What if the Chiefs just, spend a little money? I mean, I know that they probably don't want to spend $19 million a year. If the market's not great out there, Nick, maybe you meet in the middle a little bit, 16, 17-ish on a 2-year deal, and L'Jarius hits free agency again at 29.
Yeah.
Who says no, Nick? Who says no? Other than L'Jarius Sneed and his agent.
Here's what would have to happen for your scenario to get the thumbs up. Are you ready for it?
I am ready.
Every single dollar of that contract is guaranteed.
I would be okay with that.
Every single dollar has to be guaranteed for an agent to even remotely think about going for that. Like that's at minimum, and then the agent can say, hey, I got every single. I'm one of the first agents to get every single dollar guaranteed. Every single dollar of my client's contract got guaranteed.
And I like saying who says no, Nick, because as I think you may know, have heard me say, anytime you hear someone propose a contract or a trade scenario and says who says no, you can bet that the parties involved would say no. At least one of them would say hard pass. So, all right. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope we answered your questions. I know there were a few that maybe we didn't get to, especially there at the end when I didn't want to poke the bear anymore, asking anything about the draft because, it's free agency. And I didn't want to wear Nick's brain out talking about the draft and making him angry. So...
yeah, we gotta be sound unstable, man. That's not cool.
No, you are not. But you are a draft enthusiast, but you are also a free agency enthusiast, and Nick is also very practical because Nick is. This is what I love about Nick, and I'm trying to be more like him in that regard, which is don't worry kind of about things until they happen, and it's free agency, so don't worry about the draft until after free agency is done.
Well, I mean, you just gotta. Like, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna start watching draft picks.
Oh, I know you are. You have.
Here's what I'll say: I had my whole process that I was gonna do, and then real world life things happen. So yes. I was like, hey, I'm gonna go more than my grandpa. I'm not gonna worry about watching 30 wide receivers over this next week like I had planned. So I know that sounds weird. I don't know. Maybe it sounds weird. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know, but. So, that put it back a little bit. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to reset here for a minute and I'll figure that. I'll get back into the swing of it at some point. But I mean, there's still time. So, I mean, I'll try not to procrastinate too much and try to, after free agency gets through a handful of days and like most of the guys are off the market, like, literally early this morning after the running back market kind of in my opinion, kind of all the name brand got taken off there. And if you want to go get the New Balance shoes or whatever, other shoes were there that I'd never heard of before, then you could go get those because the Nikes, the Adidas, the Reeboks, they were all gone, and even the Skechers were all gone at that point. So, it just, I don't know. I'm wandering at this point, Matt. That's where I'm at, and I gotta eat my dinner at some point. I just realized I haven't done that yet.
Well, have you been to the grocery store? That's the most important question.
Actually, I went while I was on bereavement last week. I went on Friday, so that reset my schedule. I'm still doing laundry, trash, doing 2/3 of it, but the expiration dates on all the food that I purchased has further dates back to where I'll figure it out later in the week.
Nick and I both have trash on the same day, so that tells you a lot about, I guess our demographics that you shouldn't know too much more about. But I want to thank everybody. I know quite a few of you, said some very kind words to Nick for his loss with his grandfather. And Nick, I heard from people as well. So I want you to know we were all thinking of you, buddy.
Yeah,
thinking of you and your family. Free agency still going on. We will see what happens tomorrow. If the Chiefs do anything exciting, you might see me here back on Chiefs Digest to at least talk about a little bit. If there's any big breaking news, anything of that nature. Of course, the next thing up is Sunday. Nick and I will be back with 41 is the Mic, the next episode of the podcast. So we will be back and talking about what happened this week. And once again, starting to look forward to what's happening next and where the Chiefs may go next. So if you didn't get your questions answered tonight, you may get them answered on the podcast next week, or come back next week on the live Q&A and fire away again. So,
and hopefully I sound normal again.
And hopefully Nick will be 100% strength. So
yeah, that's what happens when a germaphobe is around a whole bunch of people at a visitation and a funeral.
There you go.
You wear a mask. That's on me.
You get sick. It happens. Well, Nick, we want you to get well.
Yeah.
Because we got a lot of tape for you to get through.
That's true. I thought about watching some today, and I'm like, once I do,
you're not going to stop.
They're going to sign 2 people, and I'm going to have to stop.
See, that's why you have to wait through free agency before you can dive into the draft.
I know.
So,
and we're not talking all free agency, just enough to where it looks like a day or two before Christmas down the aisles.
At least until the wave 2 crest,
Yeah.
There. Well, we're almost there. So tomorrow's the first official day. People can start signing their contracts. We heard from Chris Jones today. We'll see if I know that the Chiefs are going to try and make available Irv Smith, and maybe we'll hear from some of the other players who have come back and signed, even some of the players that they're retaining, and any new free agents. So anything pops up, we will try to let you know and keep you up to date about it. For now, appreciate you joining us, and we will see you again either at 41 is the mic or right here next week.